Hello, welcome to that InboxArmy podcast. I'm your host, Scott Cohen, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Garen Hobbs. Hey, Garen, how you doing?
Not bad, thanks. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday. Yeah, we like to record on Fridays around here just to, I don't know, it's a good way to blow off steam. Why not? All right, today we're tackling two potential areas of opportunity for email marketers, AMP for email and actually WhatsApp. Both have been around for a while, 5 years for AMP. 15. I looked this up. Like, when did WhatsApp start? 15 years ago is when WhatsApp started. But neither has really found a foothold yet here in the States, each for their own variety of reasons. But as with any opportunity, I like to explore them and talk with folks much, much smarter than me about these topics. So joining us today is Nicholas Einstein, Vice President of Product Marketing at Netcore Cloud. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
It is a pleasure to be here. Scott, Garen, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Before we get too deep into the weeds, I love to learn about people's journeys. And we've met, I don't know how many iterations of our lives ago,
Sure.
but in how they ended up where they are. Tell us about your journey and how you're now at Netcore.
So I've had a long journey in email specifically, kicked it off kind of as a practitioner, really at Real Networks, back in the days when people had a real player on when there's a real player on everyone's machine.
Oh my God. Yeah.
we remember this. The audience might not be so tuned in, but I ran email and CRM back at Real Networks back in the day. And from there developed a love for the channel there. And from there worked with several vendors doing email strategy. I led deliverability teams and other teams. I was an analyst for 5 years with David Daniels at the Relevancy Group, covering marketing technology, data management, email, deep in the weeds on email. And so, and from there was at Cheetah Digital for a little bit before joining Netcore to run product marketing and analyst relations. So, yeah, a pretty deep 20-year journey through from practitioner, analyst, vendor in email.
You could say you've seen some things with the big wide eyes. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we'll do an after hours chat and we can get some of those stories. But all right, let's jump into AMP. AMP has been, like I said, been around 5 years, still kind of misunderstood. Can you give us a sort of AMP for email 101?
Yeah, I think it's a little misunderstood. I think AMP in general has a bad rap. I think AMP, originally developed by Google to help them load search pages better and faster, and it kind of was hemmed and hawed with and got some adoption, and now much less so. Really not supported much in terms of traditional AMP on the web. AMP for email at that same time. The teams internally at Google, the office teams, the G Suite teams, and things began using it pretty extensively internally, and using it with us. I think many of us have probably engaged with an AMP-enabled email in their Gmail, responding to like a GDoc or a calendar invite or something where you're taking an action in the message and you're actually taking the action. And for many of those, it's kind of unconscious. But there are some headwinds, and it's enables some amazing use cases in AMP for email. Really, truly app web experiences in the inbox, but it has had a rocky road. Has not seen significant adoption in North America. That said, some significant adoption happening globally, where some of the headwinds aren't for the standard aren't blowing quite as strongly. So it has had a little bit of a rocky road. Still not seeing some widespread adoption in the North American market, but seeing some amazing stuff in Asia and beyond.
Yeah, I love the word you just used, headwinds, right? I feel that's incredibly apt. In fact, our mutual friend, Chad White over at Oracle, recently wrote what I found to be a very excellent and helpful article about the present and future of AMP. And he also used the word headwinds when kind of describing some of the challenges facing the standard, right? First off, unique coding language, MIME part, ESP support, inbox provider support are kind of primary among them. Walk us through some of these headwinds and whether or not you see the winds changing.
Yeah, and it was a good piece by Chad. I was pleased when you guys brought it up. I read it myself, obviously, and I think he referenced a webinar that we had done together for the ESPCC or on the topic. But the sender, a lot of senders have supported it for a long time. Many of the big ESPs in the space do support sending AMP for email, including many of the biggies. Chad's does not, but many of the other ones do. But they haven't really, including one of my former employers, but they haven't really supported it. It's another MIME type, to your point. And so they've had a window to put the MIME type in, but not really supported it with training, enablement, and education, because it is a totally different paradigm, right? When you're sending an AMP-enabled interactive message, oftentimes you're not looking for a click-through. Your goal is not generating a click-through to your landing page. It's bringing that landing page and or the shopping experience or the browsing experience right into the message itself. And so the paradigm completely shifts. So it requires more than just opening up another window to cut and paste your MIME type in. It really requires some enablement, and not a lot of that has happened in the industry. Like not a lot of people have hopped on the AMP bandwagon, and many initially by just supporting the MIME type, but not really enabling it. And I think a lot of that it's and the mailbox provider part you mentioned, it's supported by Gmail, Yahoo, some other kind of fringe support mailbox providers, but not by Apple. And so in markets, developing markets, in India, APAC, a lot of big markets, where Google is dominant, Gmail, Android are really the go-to. Addressability is huge, and so you're getting a big piece of your audience when you're sending an AMP enable message. In other markets, it's less so because of that that lack of Apple support. But I tell you, even it's more this, from my perspective, the headwinds are more the sender just really enabling it with editors and templates and things to really enable brands and marketers to launch it. Make it part of it.
Is it kind of a chicken and the egg thing though? Like Apple's not addressing it, so because it is 50+% of our market here in the States, in terms of, I don't think Apple Mail itself is that big, but just in general, it's such a large piece of it that, like, why are the ESPs going to support it if Apple isn't going to support it? But then Apple's probably not going to support it if the ESPs don't support it. But why isn't Apple getting on board? And maybe this is more of an opinion than, based. We all have our theories about Apple, but I'm curious why aren't the inboxes embracing this?
So I would bet that a lot of the theories that you guys hold around Apple for a lot of other, tangential reasons hold true here too. Apple likes to do their own thing, and they don't generally, AMP is now an open source standard run by an open source group. Google kind of gave it away, but Apple is slow to often doesn't choose to they often choose to go their own way. I think the flip side too is I'm not sure the other big headwind is just market demand. Not a lot. There isn't a ton of awareness out there in the space for around AMP for email. Every time when I go talk to prospects and speak at conferences, it's often do roundtables. It's often the first time people have consciously experienced some of this stuff, and they're often wowed. But there hasn't been a huge pull from big brands to say, hey, I need it. I think that's largely due to kind of awareness, and in this market, some of that driven by people like us who maybe haven't seen it as a big opportunity. But that's not the case in other markets, and I think even in this market, when you really break it down, if you can achieve some of these really spectacular use cases with a piece of your audience, could that be meaningful?
Yeah. And now we get back to that aspect of chicken and egg again, right? Is the demand low because the support is low? And is the support low because the demand is low? I tend to defer to one of the greatest movies of all time, Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come, right? But at the end of that, let's dig a little deeper. I mean, is the juice really worth the squeeze, right? Some very, very cool use cases, as you mentioned. Even a jaded, email geek like myself is often blown away by some of the really inventive ways that AMP has been put to work. But it does seem to me that some of what AMP does can also be done very artistically with HTML and CSS. Right?
Yep.
But leaving that overlap aside, much of the other use cases, the value of AMP seems to be in making email interactive, which of course then makes the message itself the engagement touch point, right? So what is the real value of that compared to the effort of getting such use cases off the ground?
Yep. And the value is measurable and enormous, because what we're really doing is reducing that friction from clicking through, that friction of a landing page, the friction of the shopper experience leaving the inbox itself. And so by and depending on the use case, they can be amazing. So simple use cases like ratings and reviews. Oftentimes ratings and reviews, you're getting people either who really love it or really hate it. You're going to follow up often with a post purchase, give us a review, but if you follow up with that post purchase and give us that review and it's right in the email and I don't need to click through and I can click my 5-star and give it to you right then and there, the metrics go up exponentially. Like your conversions on simple things like that, ratings and reviews, zero-party data collection, asking a simple question just in the body of your message where you don't need to direct anyone out of the email experience. Those sign up for a webinar. Some of these things go up astronomically when it can happen in the message itself. Some of the other ones, schedule an appointment. Appointment bookings, flight reservations, a lot of these use cases where if you can catch a user with a message at the contextually relevant moment with a quality message, you can generate some conversions that you will not see if you happen to click them back through an app experience or others, depending on what those conversions are. But the juice can be really worth the squeeze depending how hard the squeeze is. And getting back to my previous point, like we've been making it really hard for people to squeeze for years and years by not giving them editors, not giving them templates, not giving them the expertise, the education, the know-how to do it. And which is it's tough. It's a new process, new QA process, new development process. It's just a new way of doing it. And email marketers, we know we get new can be scary and tough sometimes. So it's the squeeze has been tough to date. And I think that's really, you're getting at the crux of the issue. The juice can be sweet, but squeeze has been tough to date for many people.
So it sounds like it's really about reducing or sort of optimizing conversions by reducing the friction, shortening that path to conversion. And more importantly, what I heard was maybe controlling the experience a bit more, right? A customer clicks, leaves the email. Now all of a sudden you're herding cats, right?
You're herding cats. And we all know we got marketing funnels. We see, you get to a landing page, you get certain people click on the email. Not everyone's converting on the landing page. When you can bring that landing page right into the email, you literally remove a step in that funnel, and the numbers, it can be amazing for again, some of those use cases. Totally.
I'm going to ask a nerd question here because we kind of talked about successes already, but have you done a head-to-head where you take the audience that is theoretically AMP capable and done like a half and half? When you talk about like it's measurable better, like what does, you don't have to name the company, but maybe give a couple examples. It was like 85% more, like people, if I'm going to tell my client, hey, go ask your team to let us do AMP for you.
Right.
What is the, what's that juice look like?
For sure. And without kind of, promoting Netcore too much, I will tell you over the media post, email awards, are they called the Email Insider Award? They're actually, there are 3 of them on the shelf back there. But the media post awards.
Did you steal them? Admit it, you stole them.
I did not. Didn't have it. But 2 years in a row, best interactive campaign won by Netcore for 2 different brands doing 2 different campaigns, but both zero-party data collection, actually, where they're driving, they're looking for an incremental piece of data that they don't have to drive further personalization and segmentation efforts. And each one, actually, one of them this year was a gold calculator where people were putting in how much gold they have at the moment and what they could get at the exchange rate. It was a calculator to change gold. But right in the email itself, and then you figure out your rate and you can schedule an appointment and go make it happen. And the other one was zero-party data collection, but like 10x response rate over those who have to who get a generic email and click through. And part of it really is, people, one needs to work hard in the inbox today to send a good message, right? Like the inbox is a competitive spot. You got to send a good message. And and people's minds are rarely blown when when they receive a message. If you can, flip the paradigm a little bit, not only does that conversion as 10x is what we see in some, that's at the high end. But you can also change people's whole expectation of your program. If I'm going to my email every day and I'm getting a quiz and I'm getting a gamified experience and I'm getting an interactive experience, it's a different, I'm paying more attention to those messages. If I can search the product catalog, I'm paying more attention to those messages, and we see just rates overall going up as a result of sending better, more engaging, interactive messages. Yeah,
in a world where marketers and strategists are just scrapping to get 1, 2, 3, 5% increase, I'd imagine that something like 10x is pretty darn attractive, right?
It's crazy. But again, in this market, we temper that by saying, okay, if how big is your Gmail and Yahoo audience? Because they're the addressable audience for this. And then what percentage of them are going to open it on their Apple device, on their iPhone? Because if they're opening it on their Apple device on their iPhone and they're going through the native Gmail client or Yahoo client, we're good because they'll see the message. If they're on the Apple Mail client, they're not going to see it. So there's a little bit of you have to whittle that down. But if you're going 10x on 30% of your audience, or 20, even 20, whatever, what percent, that's going to be a meaningful number.
That's good juice.
That's what I'm saying.
Good juice.
Yeah.
So keeping in the same topic, I feel like people can sometimes conflate what AMP does compared to dynamic content platforms like Zembula, MovableInk, LiveClicker. How does AMP compare to those costed services?
Yeah, and it's a good question. I think AMP, some use cases there could be a lot of overlap. Like with AMP, the sky's the limit. You can really do almost anything you can do on a web page or in an app, and so you can accomplish many of the same use cases one would accomplish in some of those other platforms. The addressability obviously is different, and so when one is sending an AMP enabled message, it's another MIME type. You're sending an HTML message, you're sending the AMP message. They're both going out. You're sending a text only message if you're doing that, but they're going out, and at the time, the recipient is determining which version is shown. And so if a client doesn't accept the AMP message, they're going to get the fallback HTML message. And in many cases, those messages, as part of a cogent email marketing strategy using AMP, would include something like some of those other dynamic elements like MovableInk, LiveClicker, and many of those others. Where the main difference is the total the guardrails come off with AMP. Again, we can do product catalog searches. We can do add to cart, in the cart manipulation. Go to checkout. Often in North America, you want to check out on the checkout page, not in the email. But you can do a lot kind of deeper stuff in AMP. But in many kind of, I would say, like a sophisticated program, those technologies would be working symbiotically to drive just better interactive content across all recipients. So there's was that a good answer? Did I get to that?
No, I think my takeaway from there is, rather than look at them as necessarily competitive entities, look at them as handmaidens kind of on the same journey.
I think that's the way to look at it. And again, I think there is some overlap in use cases. You could do a countdown timer in a bunch of different spots, and you can do some live, loading of live content in AMP or in some of those others. But I think they work together very well.
I want to ask a little bit more about the MIME type. So just being in the weeds as long as I have been until the last couple of years, are you designing two versions of an email? Like, I know in some cases, like I was talking to a mutual friend of the show, Ryan Phelan, he just did an AMP email with one of his clients. And he talked about it was this really cool envelope that opened up to this whole huge thing. And I said, well, what does the backup look like? And he said, it's just the full email. Right. But when you're talking about things like the cart experience happening inside the email, those sort of actions, like what does it just default to a link? Like how does it work?
Yeah. And it's I think it works differently for depending on different use cases. If you want, for instance, a ratings and review, you could, if you're sending a message, hey, post-purchase email, thanks for purchasing, ratings and review, that you are either the fallback message is just the link to, please give us the review. You fall back to and the AMP version so it is a different version.
Okay.
When you're loading it in, you're loading in your HTML version, and then you clicking over a tab and going in and loading your AMP version. But in practicality, a lot of clients or a lot of senders will take their HTML version and then augment it through an editor by adding and we call amplets, little pieces of functionality like a rating or review, a zero-party data collection, something in the header, something in the footer, and live weather, chat with an agent, so, some of that kind of interactive chat, some of that stuff, which doesn't necessarily impact the big message, or the formatting of the overall message. So oftentimes people start with the HTML message and then put it in an editor and make it an AMP message.
You said amplets, and now the irrepressible child in me cannot prevent my mind from conjuring little yellow minions running around as amplets.
Nice. I like that. I like
Dave, Kevin. I just love that the minions have just normal names.
I like it. Well, yeah, come on. We love the minion.
We do. Well, one more question on AMP before we move on to WhatsApp. But you mentioned cart and all that. What security implications of taking checkout in email?
Yeah. So
how does that work?
Often it's in instances and in regions where people are actually executing transactions in a message, they're executing via a wallet, via they're not putting PII in the message itself. They're not putting a credit card. They're executing via a
like Apple Pay, Google Pay, something like that. It wouldn't be Apple Pay. Yeah.
That's exactly right. We found in North America, a lot of stuff happens on the checkout page on the website. Like there are a lot of tags, there's a lot of things, and people actually want people to check out on the website in many cases. And so bringing the shopping experience into the message, it works great for for an abandonment, for order path or cart abandonment messages. Things where carts where you want to change or there are other use cases too. But in this market, people generally want to send people back to the page itself to actually do the checkout. So the security implications on the credit card and things aren't there. But people also talk smack in the industry about just AMP itself being a standard that's secure. And I think, and whether, actions you take in the email, are being tracked. And I think that does go back to maybe the original kind of Google AMP kind of not for email, where they were developing it for web pages and people, having kind of concerns over there. But AMP for email is just as secure as anything you're going to do in your on your website. In many instances, but we most commerce experiences still happen on the website.
Well, all those people want to get credit for something, right? Yeah, it's a whole thing.
You know.
All right, let's hop over to WhatsApp. It's something I use, but not a lot. A little. It's only because I know people overseas.
So that's what I was going to ask you next.
Yes. But I was saying, when you travel, and like I went to India last year, I was telling one of my guys, over there, that we're going to talk about WhatsApp and how it's not a big thing here, and his jaw just dropped. And he said, if WhatsApp went down, like India would shut down. It's just a whole thing. So, but it's not something that's caught on here. So let's talk about WhatsApp, and maybe, it's been around for 15 years, but really from a marketing value perspective, I don't think people have really picked up on it yet. So talk to me as if I was a noob, which by the way I am, and let's talk WhatsApp.
Yeah. No. And I'm, I did not have WhatsApp until I started working for a company based in India. Although a buddy of mine lives in Mexico, and he started, I think it is certainly a dominant platform internationally, and to your point. And so a global presence is enormous. And so marketers who are targeting, consumers outside of North America have caught on to WhatsApp, and it is a pretty compelling marketing experience. Here, I was actually amazed to see there was an article, I think it was in Q4, it was just before the holidays, in the New York Times, Sunday New York Times, about kind of Zuckerberg and his intentions and things. And it called out 18 to 35-year-olds, over 50% of 18 to 35-year-olds in this country are on WhatsApp. I don't think any of us still fit into the category.
No,
Not for a decade.
But
Yeah.
but we're in there. But over 50% 18 to 35 currently in this country are in WhatsApp, and so that's a pretty compelling market already, right? I forecast it growing. The former analyst in me says, it's a pretty compelling platform. There's a lot you can do in there. You can shop in there, and so that's another. When I think the similarities to AMP for email come in when we're just kind of bringing that conversion experience from the website into the email. Same thing happens in WhatsApp. You can bring that conversion experience right into the messaging experience. Unlike the way most people use marketing email, most people do use, when they're using WhatsApp, think about it in a two-way exchange, because you engage with your audience there, and then you try to elicit a chat, a two-way exchange experience, which is a pretty compelling, a compelling thing when you bring it into, especially from my perspective, when you bring it into like an email, an overall customer journey. So you use email when you need to communicate with customers in a certain way, and then when you really want to elicit some near-term, real-time, back and forth engagement, WhatsApp steps in. And so getting back to the new part, with WhatsApp, you can send a message, you can chat with the respondent. The message can be highly interactive, and it can be gamified. You can do a lot more than just text. It's a graphic kind of platform, and people can engage with the product catalog. They can do, they can shop, and in WhatsApp they can convert pretty seamlessly in channel. And so it's for a big section of the world, it's a really, really compelling prospect.
Awesome. Nick, leaving the AMP aside, just comparing channel to channel, right? What does WhatsApp offer that SMS, or maybe even more comparatively MMS, doesn't, right? Is there a cost advantage? Is there an experience advantage?
No, not cost. So all of that stuff is expensive. And that's why, as I think email marketers, it's good to weave it in strategically with an overall program, because you don't want, and I think a lot of us, you take your take on this too, but SMS too can be pricey, and you want to be, you want to figure out how you want to use it strategically and synergistically with the program. But WhatsApp is totally graphic. So you can do high res images, and and video, and engaging content. The chat aspect, which is again highly it's across the world. It's how a lot of folks spend most of their time sitting in that client, and so the interactive chat aspect, and then the conversion component. You can shop there are WhatsApp shops, and so it's richer media and more kind of interactive and engaging than the kind of basic SMS, MMS stuff. Although, not saying they don't play a role too.
Yeah, would you say, I get this question probably twice a week, is SMS worth it? And I go, it's expensive, but the people that sign up for it display a higher level of intent, right? Because you're saying, please interrupt me. And so would WhatsApp be analogous to that in terms of level of intent? Like they're the same deal. They're inviting people to
I think it's
bother them essentially.
100%. And high level of intent, and often at like contextually relevant moments, because they're wanting to go back and forth and, with you at that moment. So yes, I would say it's similar from that perspective for sure. And similar in that it's expensive compared to email.
Well, most things are expensive compared to email.
So what I'm hearing here is, WhatsApp provides the opportunity for a full app or web-like experience where primarily today SMS and MMS are still, their value is primarily as a messaging channel itself.
That's you're hearing it. You're hearing it correctly. Awesome. And there's value to that too, right? For sure.
So let's build on this even more. What does RCS, or how does RCS fit into this whole picture? Rich Communication Services, for those who aren't familiar with, yet another acronym in our industry.
No, right. And another one where there's much bigger adoption globally than there is in North America at the moment. I think due to some of the same market factors, Apple headwinds.
Although Apple did say this year they might. I'll believe it when I see it, but they're claiming.
But I would bet we would not be. I bet that would not be a bullet point on this podcast if they had not said that. Really, right? Like I think
probably, yeah.
Like, but very similar to WhatsApp in the type of experiences that one can offer. Obviously, RCS originally Google standard, so which makes the Apple piece that much more interesting, and maybe your skepticism is. Yeah.
Well, the cynical side of me goes, like you said earlier, they want to build it themselves, and maybe they went, we can't do it, so let's just take theirs. Why spend all the money to build it ourselves?
No, right. But again, very similar points to the previous one. High intent audiences, people who really want to engage. Those and especially in APAC and some emerging markets where the phone is the primary method of engagement, or in many instances the only digital engagement that they're having with brands, and offers many of the same benefits. Rich media experiences, interactivity, better measurement than traditional experiences, more granular measurement. And so we see it as a nice component to a overall customer journey, and in many cases we see customers use it as like a next best channel node in a customer orchestration. Hey, do they want to hear from us, and which channel do they want to hear from us, and leverage either first or zero party data to AI to get to that conclusion. But it's oftentimes a really compelling piece of the mix. I do potentially anticipate it getting more play as it gets more we see more support in this region.
So to me, that begs an interesting question, right? I mean, it seems like every couple of years we see a new channel enter the chat, right? Which means potentially our audiences are getting segmented or diluted across many more channels than we previously found them, which also challenges us to create content and messages that are relevant and appropriate for each of those channels. If our addressable audience in each one of these channels starts becoming smaller simply because they're now fragmented across others, how should marketers think about A, prioritizing, and B, investing, and in what order?
No, that's a great question. And I think there's probably a lot of there's certainly a ton of overlap. And how do marketers think about like coordinating those in a way that is, creates kind of cogent experiences for consumers? In many, in many respects, just pragmatically, some of these other channels are expensive, right? And so if you can achieve goals through an engaged audience in email, that is a really primary goal. And if you can make those emails even better with interactivity or in-channel conversions, even better. As those other channels mix in there, oftentimes either customer preference, where do you want us to communicate with you? Prior to, put the customer at the center of that decision, would be another pointer there. But in prioritizing, I think comes down to either, best opportunity for return on investment. Where are we going to get that conversion with the least spend? And in many cases, that's going to be prioritizing a more sophisticated, targeted, relevant, personalized email experience, and leveraging those other channels for kind of sauce or spice on the main dish, based on customer requirements or preferences.
I love the philosophy you outlined a moment ago. And I tend to agree. Customers are going to live and interact wherever they prefer to live and interact. So the best thing we can do is provide an experience and a touch point for them where they already are, rather than forcing them to what might be for them an unnatural action to interact elsewhere.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you.
And none of the channels work in a vacuum. I mean,
it's an ecosystem.
I'm an email guy. I've been ranting about how last click attribution sucks for like 5 years now. So
right.
Just look at all the data. It doesn't matter what the last touch is. If they're on the list, you sent an email, you sent an SMS, they magically convert through organic search, right? Or direct traffic. Odds are you're driving that as an emailer, or if you're sending a WhatsApp, if they're not doing everything inside of WhatsApp or everything inside of the RCS. People are strange, man. People, I think I said it to you yesterday, Garen. People be peopling.
People be peopling.
No, I like it. I like it. And when it comes to like those cross, you can't fall down in any of those channels, right? Like when they see us, they're not looking at us as different channels. They're looking at us as us. And when you put a bad foot forward in any one of those areas, you can step in a puddle.
Customers don't sit and look, I'm on email, now I'm on WhatsApp, now I'm on SMS. It's for them a still continuum, right?
And you got push and in-app if you have an app, and it's just a whole thing. I mean, it's just
100%.
And us email marketers are going to own all of those pieces, right? We're going to own email. We're going to own SMS. We're going to own RCS. We're going to own WhatsApp. We're going to own push. Like we should, because we're the stewards of the data. But that just means, holy crap, we have to do everything.
No, it's true. It's true. And it can get to be a lot if it's a bunch of different platforms where you're trying to manage it all, which is another, I was talking to Chris Marriott, some of our friends, Marriott and Phelan.
Yes.
About that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, we could go on for another hour, but we'll cut it here for the sake of our audience not having 3 hours to listen to us wax poetically, nerdetically. There we go.
Just own it. Yep.
Yeah. But Nick, where can people find out more about you and about Netcore?
Certainly netcorecloud.com. There's some good information there. And if anyone wants to see some of these messages in action, they can reach out to me on email, and I'm happy to forward them over. Nicholas.Einstein@netcorecloud.com. Good spot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Nick. And thanks to you, our listeners and watchers, for tuning in. If you'd like to learn more about InboxArmy, check us out, InboxArmy.com. Till next time, be safe and be well.
Cheers all.